just keep that in mind. If you own property right now, you have a lot of equity, you can reduce your payment or, take the cash out and invest it in new property. If you are a co-host or a property manager and you work with investors, you'll want to be talking to them about this too, because if you love working with them and you want them to buy more properties, and they're investors and they want to buy more properties, they'll want to hear this. Today, I'm going to be talking about what to do and what to think about when you're you have a property, you got some equity. So I know a lot of people that have bought properties in 2020, 2021, myself 2022, even some in 2023 and 2024. A lot of us have low interest rates. Some of us don't. Some of my properties have 2-3% interest rate. Some of them have 5-6% interest rate. you know, what I talked about last week is due to, due to inflation, people have less money to spend right now. It's just like the purchasing power right now because of, prices going up and income's not going up as much across the board. People have less money to spend. So a lot of people are, not buying more real estate, right? And we haven't seen a crash in the prices of real estate. Avery Carl was talking about this a couple weeks ago. Like people expected like a real estate crash. There's been a lot less buying of new properties. So there was less properties bought in 2024 than there was in 2009. So after the 2008 crash. And I think, the main reason for that is a lot of us have properties that are, sitting at 2, 3, 4, even 5% interest rates. So why sell those properties right now? Even if you want to move, why sell? And there's not enough new homes being built in desirable areas that people want to take on 6, 7, 8% interest rates. So I think where the economy is going over the next, couple of years, like I mentioned, I do think interest rates will come down. I don't think they'll come down to 2, 3%, maybe even 4%. I don't think they should, especially with the amount of debt that the government still has. But I think that'll happen, at some point. Because the government is really going to want to refinance a lot of the debts that they've taken on over the last 5 years to refinance them into lower rates. So, they're going to want the Fed to have those rates come down. That's why they're cutting spending so bad. So if interest rates do fall, really below 6%, and this is like kind of my first step in this, talk today, is you're going to see a lot more movement in the market. It'll get hot again. If you guys remember in 2021, there was bidding wars like crazy, right? Like prices of homes went way up from 2018 to 2020, 2021. The prices of homes just kept going up because people were just paying more and more and more because money was cheap to borrow. Now that's not as much, but we still have a supply issue. So I think if interest rates do come down, I think the prices of homes will continue to go up. And if prices of homes go up as rates come down, you could, and I mentioned this last week, could be getting a deal on a property right now. I'm not a real estate agent. I've got nothing to sell you guys. I'm just calling out kind of what I've seen now and what I've seen. I think the last couple years, while interest rates have been high, I think it's been really good buying opportunities because when rates come down, you're able to refinance or sell your property for more. So I think a lot of wealth is going to be created really over the last couple years. If you were in the game and you did buy properties, which a lot of you did, then you're going to have the opportunity to do a cash out refinance, which I'm going to show you guys in a little bit, or sell your property and buy another one. Right. And if you have the ability to do that now, you may want to take a look at it as well. If you have cash right now, you may want to take a look at that as well. So running your numbers, it's a little bit, people always ask me like, hey, why is it so hard to find a property that works and a property that pencils out? You never know. In 2020, we had COVID and everybody thought there was going to be a crash and, a crash for a day. And that was pretty much it. 2021, oh, it's still so hard to find a property. 2021, 2020, we really didn't have good data on Airbnb as well. Like AirDNA was out there. We didn't have STR insights. We didn't have B&B calc. Like we have a lot more accurate data now. So people are like, well, I still can't find good properties because the prices of homes are so high. Yeah, that's true. But you need to be creative on whether you're going to, really go all out on the design, really go all out on the amenities, because that's what's working right now. You just got to find out what's on Zillow right now. You have to use your imagination to make the numbers work, to figure out, all right, this property that's in the same neighborhood, or this property that's in Myrtle Beach, you know, um, is doing amazing. It's got the amenities, it's got the hot tub, it's got the cold plunge, it's got that like really unique experience, right? But that's in Myrtle Beach. Can it work in Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, which doesn't have any properties like that? You kind of have to take a little bit of a risk and a chance. Like you're not going to get a regular property that's sitting on the market right now and put 20 grand into it with a bed, upgrading beds and linens and upgrading a couch. Like it just doesn't work anymore, right? Because interest rates are too high and prices of homes are too high. So it's just not going to pencil out. You have to be creative if you're going to buy a new home this year or even next year, or really anytime in the future. You're going to have to be really creative on who you're serving, what type of guests you're serving, and what type of amenities that you're going to offer. And then don't slouch on location too. Like people buy real estate based on location. You sell real estate based on location too. So that's kind of the foundations and the basics. So that being said, if you do find a deal right now, you could be and add value to it. You could be getting a great deal and then refinance in the future. My home, for instance, the one I live in, we got a 7.375% interest rate about a year ago. 15% down is $1.35 million house on the waters, or really the dream home that we were able to grow into. It's a $9,000 mortgage payment, every month, pretty much. Now it did appraise for 1.4 or 145 last year too. So, next year or the year after that, whenever rates come down, if I refinance at a 6% rate and my home value doesn't even change, it stays at 1.45, my payment's going to go down probably about $1,500 a month to $2,000 a month. So it's pretty interesting. And then I'm going to talk about cash out refinances, but just keep that in mind. If you own property right now, you have a lot of equity, you can reduce your payment. If it's your personal home, you don't want to move, or take the cash out and invest it in new property. If you are a co-host or a property manager and you work with investors, you'll want to be talking to them about this too, because if you love working with them and you want them to buy more properties, and they're investors and they want to buy more properties, they'll want to hear this, right? They'll want to hear, hey, you could be buying at a discount. We may have to take a little bit of a creativity mind to add value into a property. But when rates do come down, if they do, which again, I think they will over the next 2 years, they should be ready to refinance. So there's two things I want to share with you guys. First is what I call the debt to income ratio calculator. So this is really important. If you guys are doing your taxes right now or haven't filed your taxes, the banks, what they do to see how lendable you are, if you go to a bank and you want to get a conventional loan, conventional loan is typically has the best interest rates. So this is usually a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac type of product. They typically want to see between like 40 and 50% debt to income ratio. So what that is just basically calculating your monthly debts divided by your monthly income. So, what you got to do is you got to put together what your monthly debts are. So, mortgage payments, car payments, credit card minimum payments, student loan payments, HELOC payments, all that fun stuff. And then compare that to what your monthly household income is, or what your monthly income is for whoever's applying for the next loan. And then figure out what your purchasing power is. So this is just an example here. This is not mine, but in this case, there's a $12,000 a month debt. There's a $31,000 a month, and this is gross income. And then you figure out, all right, based on that, my current debt to income ratio is 39%. And if the bank requires a 45% debt to income ratio for a basic 20% down loan, I can afford adding an additional $116. Or no, my purchasing power in this case would be about $1,700. And so, all right, if I can add $1,700 of debt per month, what type of home can I buy? And so this up here is calculating what type of home you can buy. So basically, in this case, if you buy a $140,000 house, you have a $119,000 a month mortgage, and then the insurance is 800. Your total debt you're going to take on is about 1,500. So in this case, you can take it on, but you can play with some of these numbers too. If I kind of reduce this number, and I did a purchase price of like 300,000, and anything in blue you can edit. Not 30,000, 300,000. Then in this case, the monthly PITI would be principal, interest, taxes, and insurance would be about 1,900. So in this case, using 15% down, you wouldn't be able to afford that house. So the reason you should know what your current debt to income ratio is so that you can know what your future purchasing power is. What is that monthly payment that I can take on based on my current income and my current debts? Now, why do I say this is important? Because you need to know, all right, if you're filing your taxes right now and you're taking a bunch of write-offs on some rentals, or you're taking a bunch of write-offs on, maybe a business, a co-hosting business that you have, you may want to reduce some of those write-offs and pay taxes on those things now, so that you show a higher income on your tax return, because your tax return is really what they use to calculate what your incomes are. So if you don't know how this works, you're really going to want to talk to a lender about it. If you want this spreadsheet, I can share it with you. Just comment DTI calculator and I can send it to you. But I'll send it to you in Facebook Direct Messenger. If you don't understand how to use this or what this is used for, also send me a message too, because the tool is only as good as the person using it, and how you use it too. But let me know if that makes sense, you guys, or if you have any questions on this, because this is really important. If you want to refinance a property as well, there's still, and you're using a conventional loan, not a DSCR loan, they're still going to use your debt to income ratio, because if you're doing a cash out refinance of a property, your current monthly payment, that debt on that property, is going to go up, right? Because you're taking cash out. Typically, the value of the home is going to be higher, right? So you're going to want to know what your debt to income ratio is based on your current tax return and your current situation, your current scenario. So we got about 35 people in here. I've only gotten one comment for this DTI calculator, so it sounds like you guys are all good. And I can move on to the refinance calculator. But all right, next step is looking at, and this is an example of a property that we just sold in January. So I'm going to go through two examples. We sold this house in January, so I'm going to show you guys. This is a house that we bought in 2020. It's a 4-unit. Oh, that's right, we did sell it for $530, not $525. And so it was a place we bought for like $260, maybe $250 in 2020, and ended up selling it for $530. We turned these 4 units, we turned 3 of them into mid and short-term rentals. And so what we did is we put probably like 70 grand into it over the last few years. And we took the income of the property from about $26,000 a year, this whole property. And it's been doing between $70,000 and $80,000 in gross income every single year. It's been cash flowing about 30 grand a year. And so, this was like October last year. I just looked at it and I was like, all right, what do I think the fair market value of this house is? And I thought it would be like right around 550 or so. And our equity on that 550 was about 361,000, because we had a note of 189,000. So to me, I'm like, all right, if our equity in this house is 361,000, we own about 65% of the home. What is my return on the equity that I have in the home? And I'm going to try and make this bigger so you guys can see it. But what's the return on the equity in this home? Return on equity is simply what the NOI is, or really what the cash flow is, divided by what the equity is. And so, we're cash flowing about 30 grand a year on this property. And so I found out that our return on equity is about 8%, which is not very good. If it's anything less than 10%, guys, I would take a look at it for you and see just what are your options. What should you do if you're getting less than a 10% return on the equity that's in your home? You should look at either refinancing the property or selling the property. So, because if you think about it too, if you can just simple, if you can take that money by sale or refinance, and I'm going to show you guys, take that money and invest into a new property and get a 15% cash on cash return, your equity is going to be way higher, right? Your cash flow is probably going to be way higher too, but you want to know the numbers. And that's why I'm showing you guys these spreadsheets that I created. So in this case, our equity is 361,000. If we wanted to do a cash out refinance, let me share. Yeah, here we go. If we wanted to do a cash out refinance, I know I needed to leave about 75% in the deal. So typically you're only allowed to have or 25% in the deal. Typically they only lend on 75% loan to value. Sometimes it's even 70%. So that means that the mortgage, the new mortgage on this $550,000 house was going to be about $412,000. Okay. So that means I'm leaving 137,000 in the property. So I have 137,000 of equity in the property. So I take, that 361 minus 137, that means I've got 223,000 to work with. So if I pull out 223,000 and go invest that into a new property using a cash out refinance, what's my situation going to look like? So what you got to do next is just put in what your current principal and interest is, and then also what the escrow is to get what your total monthly payment is. And then the interest rate too, I need to make that a formula. My interest rate on this was about 4.95. So my total payment that I was making every single month was about 1,300 using a 5% interest rate. And most people are like, well, damn, 5% interest rate, that's not bad, right? But my return on equity is only 8%. So can I get a better return on this equity, even if I get a 7% interest rate somewhere else, or 6% or 8%? How can I leverage this equity to get a higher cash flow and a higher return on equity? Right. And if equity is your play and you're just playing the long game, that's totally fine too. But for me, I'm looking for how can I diversify my equity? So get equity in 2 homes instead of 1, and also increase my cash flow. So I want to run some numbers on that. So if I got a new loan of 412,000 with a 7% interest rate, my new payment would be about $2,700 a month. And typically, I'm going to increase the building value. So I increased the escrow by about $50 for insurance. And then my new total would be about $3,000 a month. And I've got a little calculator here on the side that you can use too. So if the home value is 550, you leave 25% in, you got a 7% interest rate, you put taxes and insurance in here. This is a little calculator for you to calculate what that monthly payment would be over here on the right. So my monthly expenses would go from, or my monthly mortgage payment would really go from 1,300 to about $3,000. So that's an additional 1,600 a month, which is an extra 20 grand a year essentially. So my $30,000 a year that we're profiting turns into $10,000 a year. So my return on equity actually went down just a little bit, not much. It really just went a little bit down. So the cost to refinance is typically about 1%. So at the end of the day, I'd be able to pull out about $218,000 to go invest into a new property. So over here on the right, what I wanted to look for and what I am looking for right now with this $218,000 is about an $800,000 house somewhere here in Eastern North Carolina that can do about 130 to 140 in projected revenue or in revenue. And what that would be is, typically like a 15% down payment, putting about 80 grand into the property as well for renovations, for amenities, that sort of thing. And again, guys, this is just kind of back of the napkin math. But my total cash invested in this without taking into account doing a 1031 exchange or anything like that, I can do a different training on that or really bring in people that do those 1031 exchanges to share with you guys. But without doing any of that, I would invest $216,000 into the property and have about an 18% cash on cash return. So this is a type of property that I'm looking for right now. So that would cash flow about $3,300 a month if we're able to hit some of these numbers. And you guys can play around with these as well. I also include the expenses, and this is kind of like my deal analyzer inside of just this spreadsheet here too. One more thing I want to talk about as well. A lot of you guys don't include the turnover costs or the cleaning fees or anything in your deal analyzers. You absolutely need to. It is not a pass through. The guest doesn't pay it. AirDNA's numbers and all the other data providers aside from Price Labs include the cleaning income in their revenue estimates. So, in a lot of cases, it could be 10% of monthly revenue that goes to that expense, right? So you don't want to be 10% off on your deal because it could probably kill your deal. So scrolling back over, so the cash flow on annual cash flow on this projected purchase is going to be about $40,000, right? So if I bought a new property, so refinance this property, left 25% in the deal, even if I got a 7% interest rate, took that 218, got a 18% cash on cash return on the property that I'm going to buy, then that would turn into an increase of cash flow by about 20 grand. Okay. So my new total cash flow annually would go from $30,000 a year to $50,000 a year. My new total equity would go down. Okay. So my equity was 361 in one home. Now I've got 257 divided into two homes. So that's also important to know. But the return on equity went from 8% to 19%. So it's over doubled. And this is before any cost segregation benefits. I can do another training on that too. If you don't know what the STR tax loophole is, you absolutely need to, because this 19% return on equity is going to turn probably into 30 or 40 after that. So that's what, kind of rough estimate of what this would look like. So taking a 30 grand property, 30 grand a year cash flow property, turning it into two properties, making it 50 grand. So, almost doubling. What's that? 70% increase, 60% increase, just from doing a cash out refinance, even with a 7% interest rate on the existing refinance and on a new purchase of a new home too. So let me know if this makes sense, guys, or if you have any questions on this. If you're following me as well, feel free to put questions in the comments here. But a lot of people are just scared of that 7 or 8% interest rate and also of the prices of homes now. But if you just break it down into simple math, and all you got to do is fill out these numbers that are in blue here and see what's possible, right? Even if I got a 10% cash on cash return, like worst case, let's say I even got like a 6% cash on cash return. So my overall annual cash flow would actually be negative, because it wouldn't be a good deal. So in this case, the return on equity would be about the same, be about 9%, which is what it was initially. But this is pretty much breaking even. So taking an $800,000 house, getting it to do 115, I'm not interested in a deal like that. So you can also play with some of these numbers too to figure out, all right, what's my best case? What's my worst case? What's my conservative case here too? So, I looked at this and I was like, I'm actually going to have to put probably about $50,000 to $100,000 into this 4-unit. If you guys want to see this again, guys, just take a look at this roof. I knew I was going to have to do a new roof, which is going to be about 20 grand. There were some upgrades I would have to make, mini splits. I wanted to upgrade the front here, and I was just like, I'm not going to gain any more equity really by putting another 100 grand into this property. So what if I just sold the property? A very similar projection here. So if I sold the property, I typically say take like 6% for, the proceeds of the sale, between 5 and 6%. You're really you're going to make about 94-ish% of the home value is actually going to go back to you, because you got to pay the realtor fees, you got to pay, some of the closing costs, that sort of thing. But typically what I say is like 94% is typically what you're going to look at. So If we sold the house for 550, our total equity is 361. And it was 94% of that 361. We're looking at 339, basically 340. And so if I took that $340,000 and invested that into a similar property, what I think I would do is I would probably put more down, and then put way more into furnishing and tech, to do a much better renovation. And I think I could get probably like 150 to 175 in revenue, because I'm probably putting more amenities, maybe finding a bigger house, and just playing with some of these numbers here. But I've got more cash to put into a new property, right? So I've got more equity, got more cash to put in this new property. So in this case, if I find a $800,000 house, it does 166 because I'm putting a lot more into it. I'm thinking I can get, a 20% cash on cash return pretty conservatively. And then cash flow about 5 to 6 grand. So what would those numbers look like? So I was making about 30 grand a year on this first property. If I sold it, made between 5 and 6 grand a year. In this case, it would be about $67,000 in cash flow. If that's right. Yeah. 10, yep. About $67,000 in cash flow. If I took that 330, invested that in a new property, 20% cash on cash return, 67 grand right there. This is before any cost segregation benefits or anything like that. So my overall cash flow basically doubled, and my new equity about cut in half. So I would only put, 20% down. So I'd sell the house, 360 of equity. Now I've got 160 of equity, but my cash flow doubled and the return on equity turns into about 42%. Right. So it is putting a lot more into furnishing and tech here. But what it is doing is increasing my cash flow by about double. So that's what I'm looking at. And that's what I'm looking for right now. I just went to go see properties down in Atlantic Beach, to find the right property for us. We may build from the ground up too. That's another option. But really we're looking for properties that need value, that are probably less than this on the purchase price, but are going to be a lot heavier on the, probably more like 2 or 300,000 on the renovation, to go and buy a better property that is in a good location that needs some work, that can hit some of these revenue targets. And so if you guys listen to my podcast, me and E's podcast with Jeremy Worden, he was talking about this exact strategy. He was talking about what are some of the cities that are kind of up and coming. Find a property that's got a bigger lot and just copy what's working in other bigger cities, the Gulf Shores, the Gatlinburgs, the nice, what are they called? Kind of more experiential type of properties, what's working in other markets, and just be the first one to do it in your market. Because really Airbnb is turning into a experiential type of platform. And this is really what's working, and what really is driving cash flow and revenue is making really, really cool experiences. So that means putting a lot more into furnishing and tech. So, PJ, it's the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything like that. So, we got about 30 people on here, guys. Let me know if this is making sense. If you guys want this calculator, just drop calculator in the comments too. It it's pretty simple math. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just some formulas you got to fill out here. Anything in blue, you'll want to fill out, right? So it's just information you want to fill out. You don't want to mess with any of the formulas here. These are formulas I've already pre-calculated, or pre-populated for you guys. But it's simple math applied to complex situations. That's all it is. And that's what I help with, people do every single day, is how do I apply simple math to complex situations? Same thing with the economy. And I talked about, last week, it's really simple economics, but it's a very complex situation. So don't be afraid of higher home prices. Don't be afraid of higher interest rates. Those are emotions, right? Use simple math here and apply them to your situation. And I'll caveat this by saying not everybody wants more cash flow, right? Some people want more equity. Some people want, to hold properties for a long time. I talked about investors and working with investors. If you're a co-host or a property manager, they're not always caring about, the cash flow of the property. Sometimes they want to take losses on the property to offset some of their other passive income, right? So you're going to want to know what the goal is for that investor and what their primary focus is. And they're going to say everything, right? They're going to say, yeah, I want cash flow. Yeah, I want equity. But you're going to want to, be able to talk to them about this simple math, and how it can relate to their situation. And so if you want to run through some of these scenarios, especially the refinance scenario, if you're managing two houses, that's better for you, right? But if you're managing one bigger house, that can also be better for you too. So you're going to want to run through some scenarios and just ask them, hey man, like, do you have a mortgage on this place? You mind me asking how much you have left on it? Like, you ever thought about refinancing and buying another property? You ever thought buying another property in general right now? Because you could be getting a discount if interest rates do come down. Supply is still really low. Prices are going to go up, right? It's just kind of basic math there too. So you ever thought about that? Do you agree with that as well? Do you have a different viewpoint on it? Do you think if interest rates do come down, do you think prices are going to come down too? Do you think there's going to be a real estate crash? Just having those questions in the back of your mind and back of your pocket to be able to ask them, I think is really powerful and important to know to see what their goals are too. So, that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. You see here, this other tab here at the top is just kind of my 5-year vision. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. If you guys don't have a 5-year vision for you, your life, your family, your health, I highly recommend putting one together. This is what I have everybody that I work with, in STR Secrets in the Mastermind has to put one of these together, so that I know exactly what they want to do, and get out, how I can coach them best, because everybody's situation is different. Everybody's got different investing goals, different health goals, different family goals, different spiritual goals, different work goals. And this 5-year vision, I think, really helps me figure out for myself what I want to do. It helps me make decisions, and then also helps me coach when I know that for each and every person that I work with too. So